Hey everyone, welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, certified financial planner, owner of Elevation Financial on the web at elevationfinancial.com. Thanks for joining me today, as always. Glad you are here. Today, we're talking about tax professionals, demystifying the different types of tax professionals. I thought this would be a good discussion because there is some ambiguity around credentials and tax preparers, tax professionals, kind of what the credentials mean, what we mean when we're referring to people. So I think it'll be a good discussion to kind of unpack that a bit. So and talking about taxes is always fun, right? It's the inescapable undercurrent that shows up everywhere in our finances. We love to complain about taxes. Our U.S. tax system is insanely complicated. But luckily, we have these trained professionals who can help us prepare tax returns, consult with us to ensure we're correctly filing and paying our taxes, while also taking advantage of legal opportunities to save money on taxes. So there is more than one type of tax professional, and there are similarities and some differences between them. And it can sometimes be difficult to understand what the different credentials mean. So we're going to walk through the different types of tax professionals, talk about their credentials, and what they do so that you can be better informed as you get help with your taxes or seek help from a professional. So there are four types of tax professionals we're going to talk about today. One is the certified public accountant, or CPA. One is the enrolled agent, or EA, tax attorney, and finally, non-credentialed tax preparer, which also includes AFSP participants, which we will talk about a bit later on. So each one has a different scope of practice, may be relevant depending on the situation. So let's dig in. So first, let's talk about the certified public accountant, or CPA. CPA is what most people think of when it comes to tax professionals. The CPA designation is really well recognized, and it's often used generically. People just say, hey, you should ask your CPA about that, even though the intention is really to ask your tax professional in general, who may or may not be a CPA. It's sort of like the term Kleenex for tissues. It's a generic. The intention is kind of generic, but the terminology is specific, even though people might mean just tax professional in general. They say CPA. So CPAs are professionals. They're licensed to provide accounting services to individuals and businesses. CPAs can provide a wide range of accounting services, which can include tax preparation, tax planning, financial statement preparation, audit and assurance services, and consulting. Some of the specific things the CPA might do would include financial statement preparation. They're often responsible for preparing financial statements like balance sheets, income statements, cash flow statements, typically for businesses. They help businesses understand the trajectory of their finances. They might be required by lenders or investors, often for public companies as well. They can also do tax preparation and planning. CPAs can prepare tax returns for individuals and businesses, and they can also help clients plan their tax strategies to minimize tax liability, and stay up to date on tax laws and regulations to ensure their clients are in compliance. They can perform audits and assurance. They can do reviews, audits, other assurance services to help clients maintain accurate financial records and ensure compliance with regulations. Audits are typically required for public companies, while reviews and other assurance services might be appropriate for smaller businesses. They can do consulting. CPAs can provide consulting services to clients on a number of different financial matters like financial planning, budgeting, business strategy. They can provide guidance on financial systems, software, risk management, controls, etc. And they can also sometimes do business valuations. They can, they'll provide their expertise when it comes to valuing your business to determine its value when it comes to selling or estate planning purposes. So overall, a CPA's role is to provide that financial guidance and that advice to help clients make informed decisions that are related to taxes, to accounting, tax laws, regulations, and just provide those types of insights. So as I've mentioned before, many people think all tax professionals are CPAs, and they often use that term as a generic catch-all. They just say, hey, CPA, when really it could mean a number of different types of tax professionals, but CPA is a generic term. So just a quick number, as of August 24th, 2022, there are a little over 665,000 actively licensed CPAs, and that source is the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. So that's, as of that date, that's how many CPAs are thought to be in practice. Okay, next, Let's talk about enrolled agents. An enrolled agent, or EA for short, is a federally licensed tax practitioner authorized by the U.S. Department of Treasury to represent taxpayers before the IRS. EAs are tax professionals who have earned their credentials by passing a rigorous exam or through qualifying experience with the IRS. So also very highly credentialed, rigorous training. Some of the specific tasks that an enrolled agent, or EA, might perform include the following: tax preparation. This is really what they do for the most part. EAs can prepare tax returns for individuals, businesses, trusts, other entities, and they're trained to identify deductions and credits that can minimize your tax liability and make sure you're in compliance. They can do tax planning as well. EAs can provide tax planning advice. They can help clients minimize their tax liability. They can analyze the client's financial situation, reduce tax exposure, and do various forms of tax planning activities. They can represent clients before the IRS. EAs can represent taxpayers for audits, collections, appeals, and they can communicate with the IRS on behalf of their clients to help resolve any issues that might come up during an audit or a collection process. They can also help with tax compliance. EAs can help clients comply with tax laws and regulations. They can ensure that all necessary tax returns are filed on time. Tax payments are made in a timely manner. They can help clients resolve tax issues such as disputes or filing amended tax returns. They can also provide education to clients. They do continuing education themselves to keep their credentials current, but they can also provide educational resources and help clients understand, their role in the process and understanding tax code. So overall, the enrolled agent, provides tax preparation services, tax advice, guidance, tax representation. And according to the National Association of Enrolled Agents, there are approximately 53,700 practicing enrolled agents as of 2023. I couldn't get a specific date on their homepage. It was more of a general term as of the time I looked at it, which was, this is February of 2023. So at the time, their About page said, again, a little over 53,000, almost 54,000 practicing EAs at the time. So what's the difference between a CPA and an EA? So the main difference is just kind of scope of professional responsibilities. So both professionals are licensed. They have a government license specifically, and a high level of expertise in tax laws and regulations. But their training, licensing requirements, areas of expertise can often differ. So some of the key differences. So licensing is one difference. CPAs are licensed by the state. State boards of accountancy provide the licensing, the credentials or back the licensing of CPAs. Education requirements, rigorous exam, continuing education, all true of CPAs. EAs, on the other hand, they're licensed by the federal government, and they have to pass a comprehensive exam as well and have qualifying or have qualifying experience. So, both are knowledgeable about tax laws and regulations. CPAs typically have a broader range of expertise and can dig into specific niche areas like accounting, auditing, reporting, things like that. While EAs typically will specialize in tax matters, tax preparation, tax planning, representation with the IRS. So a little bit of a nuance there, but definitely some differences in scope of practice and the specific niches they can each work in. Also, the state licensing versus federal licensing is a difference. So representation before the IRS is also some nuance here. Both CPAs and EAs are authorized to represent clients before the IRS, but because EAs have more specialized focus on tax matters in many cases, EAs are authorized to represent clients in all matters before the IRS, including audits, collections, and appeals, while CPAs might have a more limited scope of representation depending on their area of expertise. Both have continuing education requirements to keep their license current. That's kind of an area of commonality. So those are kind of some things in common. So how does it apply to your specific situation when you're looking at CPA versus EA? Overall, they're both highly qualified professionals. They both provide valuable tax advice and guidance to clients, as well as preparing tax returns. And really the choice between a CPA and an EA depends on the specific needs and the scope of the services required. But in general, both CPAs and EAs are qualified to prepare tax returns for the vast majority of people in the U.S. I want to be careful here because there's always nuance and I don't want to oversimplify it, but I would venture to say that for most people, the average person, at least the average individuals and families that I work with anyway, there is very little to no difference in practical application when it comes to CPA versus EA. When it comes to preparing tax returns, providing tax advice and tax planning, I see that those who work with CPAs and EAs both have very similar levels of service, similar expertise, and the practical application of both of these credentialed professionals is basically very similar. That's kind of the practical takeaway there. So remember, when you're talking about a tax professional, it could be a CPA, but it could be an EA you're working with. They're both a lot of overlap, very similar when it comes to the application of preparing tax returns. Next, let's talk about tax attorneys. A tax attorney is a lawyer who specializes in tax law. Tax attorneys are trained to understand the tax code in detail. They can provide a lot of different services to clients for individuals and businesses and nonprofits. Some of the specific tasks they might focus on are tax planning. Again, just like other credentialed professionals, they can provide tax planning, focusing on tax liability, tax efficiency. They can also do tax preparation, just like the others. Representation before the IRS. Yes, tax attorneys can represent clients before the IRS as well when it comes to audits, collections, appeals, and they can communicate with the IRS on behalf of their clients to resolve issues. They can help clients focus on tax compliance, complying with laws and regulations as well. They can help clients resolve any tax issues from disputes with the IRS. They can do business consulting. They provide guidance on tax-related business stuff like structuring business entities, mergers, acquisitions, employee benefits, legal advice on things like contracts, liability, et cetera, and estate planning when it relates to taxes. So a lot of similarities, but I find that a tax attorney is a little more nuanced and niche in specific situations that usually go beyond simple tax preparation. So how is a tax attorney different from a CPA or EA? Again, licensing is somewhat different. Tax attorneys are licensed lawyers. They've earned their law degree, passed the state bar exam. Licensing is definitely different when it comes to attorneys. Their areas of expertise, again, more specialized to focus on tax law, especially when it comes to businesses. Those are some of the main differences. There is some overlap, but again, some nuance and some specialization there. So, while attorneys are really skilled professionals and highly valued by those who work with them, it's not as common for the average person to require the services of a tax attorney for things like general tax preparation. It's hard to determine the exact number of tax attorneys in the US. There's no centralized database that tracks that specific information. But according to the American Bar Association, as of 2021, there are over 1.3 million licensed attorneys in the US. And of these, it's estimated that approximately 5% practice tax law or have a significant focus on tax-related matters. So there you go. So based on the estimates, there's likely tens of thousands of tax attorneys in the US. All right, so finally, let's move to non-credentialed tax preparer, which includes those participating in AFSP, which again, I promise we'll get to. I'll explain that. So a non-credentialed tax preparer is an individual who prepares tax returns for clients but is not licensed or regulated by the government. Non-credentialed tax preparers can include a wide range of professionals like unenrolled preparers, commercial tax preparation services, and online tax prep software. So some of the specific tasks that a non-credentialed tax preparer might do includes tax preparation. This is really what they do. They prepare tax returns for individuals, businesses, trusts, other entities sometimes. They're trained to identify deductions and credits that can minimize tax liability and help people stay in compliance, just like other credentialed or other professionals that may be credentialed. Again, these are non-credentialed tax preparers. They can sometimes provide basic tax advice. These non-credentialed tax preparers can provide basic tax advice like tax deductions, tax credits available. However, they cannot provide legal or professional advice on complex tax issues. They can do electronic filing. These non-credentialed tax preparers can e-file tax returns for clients, and that can be a faster, more efficient way to help submit tax returns. They can also communicate with clients to gather basic information, answer basic tax questions, and just generally kind of just do day-to-day communication related to tax returns. So most people aren't aware, I shouldn't say most, many people aren't aware of this, but anyone can become a tax preparer in the US. There's no specific educational experience requirements for becoming a tax preparer. Individuals can enter the profession without formal training. However, our tax preparers are required to comply with all these federal and state tax laws. And there are certain rules and requirements they have to follow. So again, literally anyone can become a tax preparer as long as they follow the guidelines and rules in place. So one of those rules is, for example, tax preparers have to have a preparer tax identification number, which is a PTIN or PTIN for short. Again, that's a PTIN, stands for Preparer Tax Identification Number, and that's issued by the IRS. The PTIN is used to identify tax preparers and ensure that they're authorized to prepare tax returns for clients. So additionally, some states might have other specific requirements like licensing or registration, depends on the state. They can vary widely. So again, it's very state dependent for some of these things. So if you want to become a tax preparer, for example, you've got to check with your state's tax agency to determine what those specific requirements are. So it's important to note that these non-credentialed tax preparers are not regulated by the government, so they might have varying levels of expertise or training. Again, not required to meet any specific educational or experience requirements, pass an exam, no continuing ed. So as a result, the quality and services provided might be variable. You might not be able to count on a specific level of quality like you might with a CPA or an EA. There's no guarantee, and the risk of errors, omissions, fraud might be a little higher. Now, again, I'm not saying these are bad. I'm not saying it's bad to work with the tax preparer who's non-credentialed. It's just different levels of expertise and credentials involved. So some non-credential tax preparers participate in the annual filing season program, or AFSP for short. I told you we would define this. The AFSP is a voluntary program established by the IRS in 2014 to encourage tax preparers to stay up to date with tax laws, changes, and ethical obligations. This program, again, the AFSP, let me make sure I said it right, AFSP program requires participants to complete a certain number of continuing education credits each year and to pass a test covering tax law and ethics. So I said before, tax preparers don't have to pass an exam or have any kind of continuing education. The exception is those participating in the AFSP. They do have these requirements. It's intended for tax return preparers who are not enrolled agents or CPAs or attorneys. It's a way of helping tax preparers distinguish themselves from other tax preparers who don't participate and to kind of demonstrate that they're committed to staying current on tax law and best practices. So it's kind of a step up from the non-credential tax preparer with the PTIN. You have this extra level of, continuing ed requirements, the exam, a little bit of an extra credential to add to it. So starting January 1st of 2016, there were some modifications made to the rights of return preparers to represent their clients. So tax professionals with unrestricted representation rights are attorneys, CPAs, and enrolled agents. Again, those credentialed professionals are all allowed to represent their clients on pretty much all matters. However, tax return preparers who participate in the annual filing season program, again, AFSP, they do have limited representation rights. They can represent their clients only on issues related to the returns they prepare and sign, and only in front of certain IRS employees like revenue agents, customer service reps, and similar staff members like taxpayer advocate service. So they are limited in scope, but they can represent their clients before the IRS in some cases, in some situations. All right, that was a lot so far. So bottom line, what type of tax professional should you work with? You know the answer. It depends. There's no right or wrong. It's always it depends, right? No right or wrong when it comes to choosing a tax professional. In general, from what I've seen, most individuals and families with simple needs are really well served by working with a CPA or an EA. Not a big discernible difference when it comes to the support you'll get from a CPA or an EA. For all practical purposes, the overlap between the two is sufficient enough that they're both qualified and capable of tax preparation for the average person. Again, it's often supported by the tendency for people to say CPA when referring to their tax pro, when in reality, they don't necessarily know what that person's credentials are. EAs are often referred to as CPA simply because the terms become pretty much generic at this point. So for those with very simple needs, a non-credentialed tax preparer may even be a great fit. There are lots of financial advisors, for example, or bookkeepers or other professionals who are non-credentialed tax preparers. They have a PTIN, and they offer this service as an add-on to their primary business. Others provide tax prep services as a primary business, but don't have the CPA or EA designation. There are some individuals doing a great job without a CPA or EA, very competent. They stay within their scope and they do a great job preparing simple tax returns, either as a primary business or as an add-on to another business. So in general, your needs and comfort level are really what should drive, what kind of tax pro you work with. So, if you have a simple situation, for example, you don't own a business, you don't have rental property, you might feel comfortable working with a non-credentialed tax preparer. That can be even more appropriate if the tax preparer already works with you in some other existing capacity, like your financial advisor, for example. However, in situations with some complexity, it can make more sense to work with the CPA or an EA. And if your situation includes things like owning a business, if you have rental properties, equity compensation, maybe a large number of different investment accounts, maybe multiple income sources, international income or assets can play a part, or significant life changes like marriage, divorce, adoption, having children. All these things can add complexity and might be a signal that it's worth considering working with perhaps a CPA or an EA that might have a deeper expertise in handling these things. Also, as with any professional, you're going to want to go beyond just looking at their credentials or qualifications. You're going to want to make sure they're a good fit. They have experience working with situations like yours. You want to make sure that they are responsive and work well with you on a personal level. Making sure your taxes are handled properly has a really big impact on your financial situation. So it's important to get it right, not just from a credential standpoint, but from just a fit. Make sure they work well with you. So ultimately, your tax pro is a really important part of your long-standing financial team. There's someone who can help you along with your financial advisor, your attorney. They make up a big part of your financial team that can really help you, be set up for success and make sure that you stay compliant, stay current on your taxes, and really set you up with the best possible financial, forecasting, planning, and efficiency when it comes to taxes. So that is a run through of the different types of tax professionals, their credentials, what they mean. I hope that is helpful in understanding what the different credentials mean and the different types of tax professionals that you might end up working with. So with that, as always, I love to chat if you have questions. You know where to find me. My website is elevationfinancial.com. I offer a free consultation to anyone the first time who would like to chat. That is a free money session. I call it a complimentary money session, actually. It's complimentary, as the name implies, which is free. My website is elevationfinancial.com. Click the button there to schedule a chat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, give you feedback, and see if I can help. So with that, thanks for joining me today. As always, have a great day. We'll see you next time.